Welcome to Reimagine Inclusive Plug series powered by RECONOMY. This episode will be dedicated to the International Day of Living Together in Peace. Let's greet our distinguished guest, Prabin Manadhar, Country Director in Nepal, Helvetas. Welcome, Prabin.
Thank you, Natalia. I'm glad to participate in your podcast. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We're happy to host you today. And the discussion, I would like to start with a quote of Dalai Lama that once said that we can never obtain peace in the outer world until we actually make peace with ourselves. Does this resonate with you? And what is your perception of peace and living together in harmony?
Well, thank you for this interesting question. Well, these are powerful words, said by Holy Dalai Lama, right? And it overflows with the wisdom. So I always believe that, inner peace is very important, for our physical and mental health. It's important for our overall well-being as well as our happiness. So when we cultivate inner peace, then only we become empathetic, we become compassionate, and we can extend our peace to outside world. That's why it's very important to have the inner peace to engage with the outside world. Regarding the question in relation to the peace, how I perceive, I always believe that, peace is about focusing our energy on the present moment, and make the best out of it, appreciate it. This is what the peace is all about. It's not the destination, it's a journey towards that destination. This is what makes us peaceful, throughout our journey. I'm sure you are aware of the fact that, life is uncertain. The future is unpredictable. So in that context, we really need to shift our mind, from being, fearful, towards from being excited, how we can stay positive throughout our journey of peace. This is how I take the peace with me.
Yeah, thank you for sharing the wisdom with us and your philosophy of life. It's very important. We speak a lot about the building of new skills, capacity building of the beneficiaries we work with. But what is your opinion on the improved emotional intelligence, the EQ skills that could possibly enhance the conflict prevention efforts at both interpersonal and societal levels?
Well, two things, the first and foremost, it's not our differences, but it's our kind of inability, to accept, to recognize, and to celebrate those differences that divide us. It's not our differences, it's the inability, to ensure to see these differences, that divide us. So in that context, I see emotional intelligence enhancing our self-awareness and social awareness. These two awareness are quite important, and the emotional intelligence, enhance those two kind of skills, self and social. I always see the conflict, it's something very natural. It presents in all kinds of interactions, human interactions, whether it's in our home, it's in our community, it's in our organization, everywhere it presents, right? So while the conflict in itself is not negative, but how we manage, how we respond, it will have different kind of outcomes and impact in terms of relations, in terms of the, overall the outcome that we make. So in that context, I see two important skills, within the emotional intelligence are important. One is the empathy. So how you perceive others, how you relate to other people, how you see their feelings. And second is the modulation, so how you modulate, how you adapt, how you control your emotions, your behaviors, your attitude towards other people. So those two skills I see as quite important as a part of emotional intelligence, preventing violent conflict and as well as building the peace in our society.
And in terms of interpersonal communication, maybe you could give an advice that you usually follow yourself when having different opinions on a subject with within your team, maybe, or with the key stakeholders. I know that there is a very good conflict sensitivity training provided by Helvetas. It's just maybe you could reflect more on the approaches that you use in your interpersonal communication.
See, I always believe that while we say team, we have a common purpose to work with, right? But at the end, team members are different. Team members bring different attitudes, different behaviors, right? Different interests, different motivation, right? So it's important to recognize that team members have the unique perspective, and this is what the team makes strong when we are able to combine those differing perspective, right? So the role of the leader is to combine those strengths, combine different perspectives, so at the end, we have the better impact and better results. That's what I see the role of the leaders in any team. And this is where I see the leaders reconcile the differences, so that we become strategic in our direction, but at the same time complementing those trends. When all the team members are of the same professional quality, this will never make a good team. So you really need different perspectives, different viewpoints. So as a leader, we really need to cultivate a kind of a culture where we are accepting the differences. We become tolerant even if it's a different perspective. And also we see the complementarity in all team members, even the team members who are subordinate to us. Probably they might have the better ideas than the leaders. That's why leaders really have to see that we are accommodating different interests, and those differing interests sometimes better than the one that we hold ourselves. Then this is how it makes a good team.
Thank you. There is a lot of evidence proving that there are a lot of benefits of having diverse team, but it's indeed a different set skills to manage the diverse team.
Of course. What about the case in Ukraine?
It's like actually only me in Ukraine at the moment. Yes. So, but speaking about the situation in Ukraine, yes, indeed, it's quite complex, of course, at the moment. As you know, there are approximately 6 million refugees that fled Ukraine, the country, and around 8 million internally displaced people. So we have to keep it in mind when designing project interventions. And that's actually how Helvetas and the RECONOMY program started addressing those needs when helping refugees that went to Moldova with building their capacities in IT specifically with the Beetroot Academy, helping women primarily to obtain a new profession, free from stereotypes, because primarily it's male-dominated field of work, but this is a stereotypes-free approach that help them to obtain economic independence. And in this regard, let's move to the question that I wanted to ask you as someone that could share the examples of initiatives or projects that promote living together in peace and foster inclusivity in diverse communities. What lessons we can learn from those projects?
Well, I've been involved in a number of initiatives, both in Nepal as well as outside. Couple of examples, but related to one common theme, that is investing in young people, because young people, they bring unique perspectives. They have a different, young energy, and they have all kind of potentialities, to become agents of peace as well as a catalyst for social transformation. This is, where I have been involved, like providing, leadership skill trainings, such as communication, negotiations, intercultural dialogue, critical thinking, and also providing a safe space, where you have the interfaith connections, and strengthening youth clubs, as well as the supporting advocacy campaign, focusing on promoting tolerance, social justice, human rights, peace. So these are all different kind of activities, led by youth and empowered the youth in all kinds of initiatives, But some of the lessons, that you've asked, I think, when we are talking about the leadership skill or capacity building programs, it has to be tailored to address the specific needs and the context of young people. That's very important, We just cannot have a blueprint capacity building model, that has to be localized or contextualized. Second, it's important to create inclusive space, where people can come and put forward your perspectives, their views, and then interact with different cultures, different faith, different groups, different genders. So that kind of inclusive space is quite important as a part of empowerment. Third is, strengthening youth, engaging in with the local governance. Because at the end, I see that, while the civil society organization, youth groups are important, but at the end, we need to make the state accountable. We need to bring the state into accountability relationship, It's a track one is quite important because the civil society for youth, these are the track two, track three elements of the entire peace process. But at the end, the negotiation happens at the track one level. So it's important that, the state, the duty bearers are sensitized, they are responsible, and they are all accountable, in the whole throughout the peace process.
Yeah, I like when they say that when working with young people, especially, it's important to engage them. And there is a quote like "nothing for us without us." So, yeah, it's important to engage them from the very beginning and to make them vocal. Yeah.
Yeah, I always see, in different programs, we have gender disaggregated data, we have ethnic disaggregated data, but we hardly have the age disaggregated data, So that group, because we focus into children, then the adults, that youth, adolescents, that's really a kind of a age group, where we really need to create hope, aspirations, so that they can really be a powerful change agents, That's a group I think we need to focus, we need to invest in.
Yeah, so how actually to make sure that the local grassroots organizations and civil society groups are engaged into this dialogue and promoting social cohesion?
Well, first we need to understand the fact that, the communities are the ones, who are directly impacted by conflict, right, or any kind of disaster. And the communities are the one who are the first responders, not the NGO, INGOs, donors, or anybody, not even the government. So it's a community, who are impacted, and community is the one who are first responder of any kind of situation. So in that context, they have a role to play both in terms of the addressing the conflict as well as the building the peace. So that's something we really need to recognize. And second, the grassroots local organizations, the civil society organizations, they are basically made up of these communities, right? Their strength is they are member based and they are built from these communities. So in that context, I see that engaging with the civil society as well as the local grassroots organizations to the fact that they are directly working with the community, so they can identify the needs and priorities of the communities. They can facilitate a dialogue, they can mediate the conflict resolution, they can raise peace awareness, they can also mobilize the community as well as strengthen them as the right holders, dealing with the duty bearers. They can engage in a range of skill development programs, and also they can engage with the government and bring the government into accountability relationship. So this is how I see the role of the local organizations, civil society organizations, because they are made up of the communities, right? So they represent the communities. So they are in between the government and the communities, these groups. So they have a role as a breeze, to build, and at the end, bring the compact between the state and the communities. This is how you can bring the duty bearers and the right holders into overall accountability relationship, and the civil society organized have an important role to play on this.
Yeah, this is a golden standard, and our role is to facilitate this dialogue.
Obviously, yes, I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah, as we mentioned earlier, according to this global data, women and children are usually disproportionately affected by the conflict, these refugees and internally displaced people. And in this regard, in your opinion, how to make sure we incorporate their specific needs in the design of the post-conflict services and livelihood opportunities?
First, I would like to stress the fact that vulnerability is not natural. Inequality is also not natural. The bad planning is also not natural. So we really need to, critically look at the unequal power relations, unequal social structure, unequal system, unequal policies that perpetuate, sustain, these injustices, that exist in our society, in the global south as well as the global north. This is what we really need to understand, these facts. But when it comes to women and children who are disproportionately impacted and affected by conflict, there are a number of things, but these are aligned to core humanitarian standards, and I'm sure you are aware of the fact that there are 9 commitments, there are standards. These are some of the principles that we can borrow from these standards and commitments. First, we need to conduct gender sensitive needs assessment to identify specific and the differing needs of the women, children, and vulnerable groups. That's very important. Then we need to ensure the participation of women in the formal peace process. That's also been backed up by the United Nations Security Council Resolution 1325. Because most of the time you see that women, they have been used or misused during the time of conflict. But when it comes to peace negotiation, peace process, they've been given the back seat, and they don't have the formal process of engagement in the entire peace process. This has happened in a number of countries, post-conflict countries, including Nepal. But we have made an attempt, to bring the women, their voices in the processes. But still, this is still an issue in the number of the post-conflict environment. Third is we really need to adopt child-centered approaches. This is where we need to protect and prioritize the rights and well-being of children. I've seen in the different world, both in Nepal as well as outside. I was in Iraq recently. Children are most affected, because they are most dependent, they are most innocent, right? So it's very important that we take factor of the children. If you can take the factor of children, then I'm sure your response is well good enough for our entire community. So child center approach is quite important in our response. The next is the safety and the protection measures to address the risks as well as the violence. Gender-based violence it's there. Before the conflict, during the conflict, after the conflict, that's there. Because the patriarchal value system. So it's quite important the fact that we have the safety and the protections so that women can freely participate and children can have the kind of safe space to grow in the post-conflict space. And next is the establishing functional conflict handling mechanism. So this is how we empower the communities that they can put forward their grievances. It could be a normal grievance, or it could be a grievance in relation to code of conduct, abuse, harassment, corruptions. So there must be a functional grievance handling mechanism. This is how we strengthen and empower the communities, including women and children. So these are some of the areas that we need to look into to address the needs and priority and the rights of women and children.
Yeah, thank you so much for summarizing this. It's very important that you mentioned the response to the domestic violence, to gender-based violence, the unequal distribution of duties within the family, and that women are mostly the taken care of unpaid domestic care duties, which has been also taken into account when designing program interventions. But also, thank you for mentioning this UN Security Council Resolution 1325, because indeed there is an evidence that shows that the presence of women at the negotiation table not only makes it more likely to reach the agreement, but it also makes it more likely to make sure that this peace lasts longer. So,
Yes.
yes, we have to keep this in mind. And I said
If
that
I may
current.
ask you, Natalia, this UNSCR 1325, to an extent, it's been applied in the current context where you have the active, war and violence going on in Ukraine.
It is Young Women is working hard on this one. This is the main
Mhm.
agenda they have
Okay.
in this process, and also the response to the conflict related sexual violence, which is also the
Uh-huh.
case at the moment, unfortunately.
Okay.
Um, and at the beginning, I mentioned that within RECONOMY, it's only me at the moment working in Ukraine, but we have a huge, very powerful humanitarian response team of Helvetas working on the ground in the conflict-affected regions of Ukraine, on the contact line, even providing
Okay.
the immediate help needed with the reconstruction on the ground. This is a nexus we also plan to build together when working in Ukraine within this recovery plan. We have one more question to discuss today. It's about the educational initiatives that can help to economically empower and bring the social integration of vulnerable groups in post-conflict environments. Like, how do
Mhm.
you perceive the role of education in this regard?
Because education, when we talk about education, but that starts from our family, right? It's from our home, so it's very important that, I see that, the encouraging, as well as engaging, men to challenge and change traditional, gender norms and stereotypes, and support women in their mobility. That's quite important. Okay, so when we are talking about education and then the economic empowerment, this is what I would talk about, because that starts from our household, right? The education. So it's very important that men, are engaged. They challenge, they change, the traditional gender norms and stereotypes. It's very important. This is then how we can invest, in girls' education. This is very very important. So I will take back, our discussion first to the girls' education. This is where we really need to, address some of the socioeconomic barriers, and men need to be involved in that process together with women. Well, a number of other things, I see that, the education has a critical role in the economic empowerment, skill development, right? Vocational skills and the localized business development support, This is where we promote employment and self-employment. That's quite important. Second, the financial literacy, as well as the management of the finance, their savings, their investment. That's quite important, even in the global south, where we have the labor migration, we receive use remittances, and male are outside the home country, so where female are left behind, to manage the finance. So financial literacy is quite important in every context, even in the post-conflict environment. So they can manage, they can invest, they can make profits, and this is how they can generate, additional income, for the families, as well as investing in the education of their children. Uh, Third would be, education. I see that, it serves as a platform, I've been to a number of schools, colleges, both in Nepal and outside. Educational serves as a platform, where you have the people from the diverse background, and this is really an opportunity. So the schools, where the children are studying, that's not only the place, where you gain the education and knowledge, that's also a place where you interact. This is how I see, the education is a platform to interact with the various background in a different context. This is how you strengthen the, your understanding of the different world. You develop your tolerance, you develop your acceptance. Then you be the part of the social cohesion from the very beginning. So I really see that, the peace building that has to start from our household, then to the school, then the college, university, workplace, then the community, state, everywhere. But the very first point is they are home and our schools. So this serves as a, as a platform, where we interact and we understand, we develop empathy, to connect with other people. This is also I see the education and the at the end the income connected. And next important element is, in education is the basically promoting the understanding of the labor rights, human rights. This is quite important. In many situations, both in the conflict as well as post-conflict environment, you see that women are not getting equal pay for the equal job, equal pay for the equal work. This is not happening in many parts of the world. So they promoting the understanding of the labor rights, human rights, where people can have the equitable access to, the opportunities. They could get equal pay for the equal work, and also they can advocate for the gender-friendly and safe working space, for all. So I really see the connections, between education and the economic empowerment, but that has to connect, from our household, community, state, and the at the international sphere. So these all are connected, but I see that, education is quite important, and that's why investing in girl child education is quite important, because I see that they are the future leaders, right? If you invest in girls education today, then tomorrow and they will become the empowered, women leaders as well as the change makers. And this is where we need to invest.
Thank you so much for this inspiring and powerful message. Totally resonates with me and fully support. And thank you for mentioning the importance of the provision of the decent work conditions, and making it a priority when designing the intervention. Make sure that, especially when you bring women to the traditionally male-dominated field, we make sure that it accommodates their needs as well. And it has to be designed in a certain way that they can feel safe, secure, and empowered. And also important message you gave, if to summarize, is about the importance of the behavior change campaigns accommodating this change in the perception of the role of women, change in the perception of the role of men in the household. And whenever possible, yes, our interventions has to be supported by the behavior change campaigns on the ground.
Yeah, I agree. We have to bring men. They are encouraged. They also engage. I think, and then they challenge, and then they change. Traditional gender norms, stereotypes, harmful social norms and practices. That's quite important. So this is where we have to bring men into the accountability relationship. Then the state. That's quite important. The state has the overall responsibility and accountability, to make sure that, we have both the equity related policies, principles, then leading towards the equality. So I think the all different segments of the society will have a very important role to play, in this context.
Yeah, we're all allies in this one. So,
Yes.
yes, the inspiration is to actually live in this peaceful, harmonious, and equal world. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so
Yes.
much for this very interesting discussion today. And yes, stay tuned and